Welcome to the Collectability Guide to Collecting the Patek Philippe Reference 3970 and why this relatively unappreciated reference is starting to gain traction at auctions and with collectors globally. There's an amazing article on Hodinkee from Cara Barrett, and she quotes, and this is May 2018. She said this. She says, "The aesthetics are there, the size is there, the movement is there. It has all the makings of a collector's watch, but for some reason, the 3970 results are always just a bit soft." Now, it's interesting to see how things have changed over the past 2 years, and the upward trajectory of this reference is quite fascinating to follow. Frankly, the 3970 deserves a 2 hour documentary at least, because I do believe this is the reference that is experiencing a renaissance in scholarship and understanding, and is becoming very quickly one of the hottest collectible watches of so-called modern vintage timepieces. The 3970 was the heir to the throne of Patek Philippe's perpetual chronograph, going all the way back to the reference 1518. And then it was the 2499. And then in 1986, the reference 3970 was born. But it's important to note the 3970 was made in generally four colors, 36 millimeter diameter, and it's based on the caliber CH27 70Q, which is based on the Ibosch, the Lemania 2310, but finished to Patek Philippe's high standard. Interesting to note, this is the same caliber later used in the 5970 and the same base caliber for the 5004. All right, beginning with the first series. I don't have one here to show you in person, so we'll look at this archive image, because back in 1986, when it was launched, only 100 examples were made. And what distinguishes this watch from later series is you'll notice the fouet hands, the batons, but most importantly, the sunken registers on the calendar, which many of them have aged, and those registers have darkened over time. The first series is the most desirable of the 3970 and very difficult to find. Collectors are not selling them. They're just keeping them. So we're seeing prices go up considerably. Concurrently launched in 1986 was the reference 3971, which had a sapphire back, and another 100 examples of those were made with the same dial configuration as the other. Also difficult to find and very sought after. Moving on to the second series, produced for a short time from 1987 to 1990, as this example here that I have with me. These were made in four different colors. The reference number changed from 3970 to 3970E, E standing for étanche, otherwise waterproof in French. Now, you can tell because it has this screw back, solid back design, which made it moderately waterproof. And these pieces are also incredibly sought after today. They're easily distinguished by the squared off baton markers. They also have the same leaf hands as the first series, and it has sunken apertures that are a bit different than the first series. So this particular watch, the second series, is still relatively affordable. You could still buy these for the low six figures, but they are quickly climbing in price as collectors distinguish between later series. So yellow gold, white gold, rose gold, and platinum second series are highly recommended watches if you can find one today. Next, we go on to the third series, produced from 1990 approximately to 1995. And this is when production started to increase for Patek Philippe with some dial modifications from the earlier series. And at this point, all of the watches had two case backs. So when looking at a third series, you'll notice that the hands have changed in style, no longer the leaf hands. They're much thicker. And the batons are now pointed and faceted, which distinguishes the later series. These are still a relative great bargain to buy when one comes up for auction. You want to have one original with box and papers and unpolished as much as possible, because the lugs are very unforgiving when they're polished. You really want to study the lugs and train your eye to see what uncut lugs look like. Less polished, the better, is the general rule. Now, the fourth series, which started production in the mid 1990s, is almost identical to the third series, yet used different serial number ranges on the movement and case numbers. So, this fourth series in pink gold was born on October 24th, 2003. And I recently received it back from Patek Philippe's service. And I'll take it out of the bag here so we can take a closer look. It still has its service sticker on the back, and they did an exceptional job as always. And you could see clearly the hands with this opaline dial and the rose gold sword-shaped hands with the faceted indexes. And in the fourth series, although they're relatively affordable compared to early series, they still have a huge presence on the wrist, and you get such an incredible look of classic Patek Philippe DNA. And for wearable complications, I can think of no other piece made in the last 20 years that gives you such a big look for the money. And I find the 3970 is, I think, still one of the value buys in today's collector's world. For investor types, one can speculate these will go up in value, especially the early series. But I also think the later series are worth considering. They're wearable works of art that they're some of the finest pieces ever made, and they belong in collections. So for collectors looking for what may be the next best thing in auction catalogs around the world, the 3970 is something to seriously consider. No watch better embodies the Patek Philippe DNA produced over the last 20 years. And in my opinion, the 3970 is a sleeper. It's a watch you could wear, a watch you can enjoy. For collector types, it's a watch you could obsess over the minute details and the differences between the various series. And for investor types, it's a watch that you could still buy, you could still find, and I expect over the coming months and years, we're going to see a bit of a bump in what they are bringing.